Hey there! In this month's issue, we are going to explore the topic of a burnout issue. This is literally equal to a disease that's silently widespreading all over the globe. It's much like anxiety, debilitating so many people right out of this game of life, and it obviously got my attention. In fact, just a few days ago, uninvited, it landed right into my lap. You see, my wife and I, we've known this couple from Switzerland that are super close friends of ours. She's my wife's childhood friend, they grew up together. And he's her husband, right? Okay, I'll admit it. They are super close friends of my wife. Well, of course, I care about them both and I really like them. For me, super close is like super close, Anyway, he's your total overachiever in life, breaking one record after another in terms of how fast one can get a promotion and advance in a career within the corporate ladder. So year after year, month in and month out, weeks, days, it all became a blur for him. A blur of constantly pushing against the wall and then pushing some more. Forever feeling that he's swimming upstream and doing his level best to fight it. You know the usual story, I guess. Big fat salary gets in, about half of that gets deducted for tax purposes, and the rest pretty much disappears on house and car installments, fancy clothing and occasional holidays. Constant peer pressure, perceived pressure from the environment they live in, where bigger, newer, and better is always on the constant demand. He exists in a constant overdrive, and achieving more and more being the only aim. He lost himself in that loop of needing more and nothing ever being enough. And the potential reason, permission for real sitting back and resting, right? At the peak of his career, so far, he even opts in for more schooling. Next level diploma is the only solution to the next level position, which only brought even less hours at home. Late night studies, exams to prepare for and do well at. I am sure you're getting the picture of someone who's about to explode or implode or simply burn out, right? Obviously, living a life like that for a while, he had no idea on how bad of a shape he found himself in. There's no real me time, no opportunities for reflection, evaluation of life, just constant pushing forward. That is, until one sunny day, his body pulls a plug on him. God knows in how many ways his body has tried to reach out to him and have him realign from within. How many signs he must have had as attempted communication of his body, trying to guide him into a sustainable way of living. But it wasn't heard. So I'm guessing when the lifestyle really becomes unsustainable, body has to pull a big one on us, doesn't it? What? What was that? Oh, you want to know what I mean by a big one? Well, you see, here's what happened to him. One sunny day, he was actually outside with his son, walking around the house neighborhood, and all of a sudden, he had these mad thoughts and feelings, horrible images running through his mind. He was imagining hurting his own son in some crazy ways. By the way, his son is 4 years old kid, which he deeply loves and adores. He was so taken by this experience, he obviously managed to put the madness aside, get his kid back home and call for help. He called for an ambulance, claiming that he's not safe and that he needs them to come to his home, and take him away. Pretty hectic, hey? Now, while he was getting the mainstream help from the system in their country, and since none of this was actually about his relationship with his boy, these kinds of mad thought attacks found their way in all the other areas of his life. All of a sudden, he cannot drive anymore because he is too freaked out with ideas of what if he crashes the car. And to save you the details, he pretty much rendered himself obsolete with just about anything in his life. His self-esteem went to sub-zero. Anything that had to do with him being responsible for the outcome, he'd just freak out and bail. Not a great setup for someone with responsibilities back at work. A whole team of people to lead and produce results for the company, right? So he took a sick leave, like a first sick leave ever, and he's looking for help now. You see, in life, near-death experiences often get us to reevaluate our lives and everything in it. Values change, beliefs change, our relationship with life and everything in it changes. But this wasn't such an event. This was an event, a life-altering event, fueled with a fear of a note, a debilitating fear of hurting his own child, which then spread to everything else in life. With life-death events, we survived and it's usually all over. It often affects us in such a way that we simply stop fussing about the small things in life and, by doing so, dramatically improve the quality of life. But for him, this wasn't over. This had just started, and he had no control and no clue how to escape from it all. So tell me something. How many people do you think are well on their way to a similar destination? Sure, some are taking their sweet time, and going into that direction very slowly, while the others are pumping it up, full steam ahead, going straight for their own wake-up call and burnout side effects. He sure knows many of his colleagues who went down that road before him. And what's kind of funny, he said, I watched these people going through some major crises like this, and I always thought of them being weak in a way, weak-minded or something. I knew this could never happen to me. And wow, now that I'm in it myself, wow, I now see myself weak as well, like an insignificant object. I failed. I failed everyone. My wife and my kid, my family, and he meant his mom and dad here. I'm a failure. Those were his exact words. And as a fellow man, while my heart would normally want to skip a beat and just reach out and feel for him, my heart also knows better, much better than this. So instead of me as well getting unresourceful and emotional, which wouldn't help anyone, right? So I saw instead, right here in front of me, a beautiful example of a human being living in the feeling of his own thinking. Here's a man right in front of me, suffering deeply, buying absolutely and completely into a reality that is entirely being generated by his own mind. He seems to believe wholeheartedly that what he is thinking and what he is imagining in his mind is true and real, as if it was happening right now. Wait a minute. Don't we all do this? Right now as well? Isn't this happening all the time for all of us? Aren't we all just living in the feeling of our own thinking? Aren't we, regardless of our collected knowledge, for the most part of it, blissfully ignorant of the fact that our thoughts create our reality and then they pretend they didn't do it? As if most people in the world don't really understand that it's our thoughts that create the emotions and that, at any moment in time, we are capable to change our thinking and thus change the quality of life. As if they don't really know and understand that just because a thought is in your head, it doesn't mean that it's real. So anyway, back to the story. When he asked me whether I can help him to get him out of this newfound misery, naturally I really wanted to, but soon to realize that there was a major language barrier involved. He is from Switzerland, born there and raised in German language. He speaks Serbian, for your basic things, but nothing too complex. Add to that my own Serbian is super fluent, of course, but on a level of a 20-year-old. The moment I get into the technical terms and trying to teach what I normally teach to my clients, I have a major stumbling block in finding the right words and communicating the necessary knowledge, right? Even when I find the seemingly right word, he doesn't understand it, of course, and then we had to use Google Translator in order to get somewhere. To say the least, it was becoming painful and not at all the best use of my time. You see, these are the moments where super close matters, and when the value of my time screams out versus who cares about the time? I'll spend next 2 weeks with you right now and stop everything I'm doing in my life right now. You see, there's a difference. So I laid down the groundwork and then referred him to one of my coaches that speak fluent German and can coach him in his language. In my opinion, all that needs to be done there is a full-on personal breakthrough session. Release the past emotional burdens, piled up stress, and alike. We also need to resolve any potential internal conflicts, free his mind from limiting decisions and beliefs about himself, especially in the domain of whether he is good enough. Also, major external reference about his identity. It all needs to go in order for him to see things differently. Once clear from all of that, We have to give this man a chance to truly find out what makes him feel alive. What gets his heart to tick with joy and excitement. We need to check his values and have them aligned, reordered even, to have his inner motivation support his conscious aims. Once we realign him with his true desires, we can set some goals and have him embark on a, who knows, perhaps a totally different journey. And perhaps still within the corporate, but this time owning his well-being and happiness, taking care of his body and mind much differently than in the past. Now, that's all fine and well, but is it necessary? Does it have to be this way? Do we really need to allow ourselves to go that far down in order to wake up and do things differently? You see, when we do things continuously in an unsustainable way, system has to break down somewhere. If you ask me, he's lucky that he didn't develop any other physiological symptomology where some organs get affected, due to all that stress. So what can we do to avoid the burnout? What can we do to ensure that we are maximizing our performance while having the body and mind totally showing up for us and supporting our chosen journey along the way? Well, we have to first discuss this question. What is burnout? You see, burnout is not some all-powerful thing that exists in our life and bother us, right? In fact, it's not a thing at all, despite of us using it as a noun. Burnout is a result of a prolonged stressing. As humans, much like all other animals as well, we are perfectly capable of processing short-term stress. When in danger, all systems fire up to maintain life. We run away from danger, or we face it and we fight it. Growth mechanisms get shut down, like your immune system, digestion system, and we go into that stress mode when all our energy is pumped to our extremities so that we can fight harder or run faster. It's stressful for the system, but the system is designed to handle it rather easily. And when danger is gone, all systems return to their normal functioning and we go back to the growth mode. None of that is a problem though. The real danger is when the stressing goes on and it never ends. We seldom end up being in the growth mode, replenishing, rejuvenating our bodies and minds, and we remain in this shelter mode, which can only result in slow disintegration. Technically speaking, we are dying during such times. And how we are manifesting this stress or the burnout? Well, it's a physical experience. Ask yourself, how does your body look like when you're experiencing stress? How do you breathe while stressed? What are the pictures that you make in your mind when you're stressed? What do you say to yourself when you get into a stress state? And also, when you are confident and resourceful, inspired or driven, how does your body change specifically? Now, if you think about it, being stressed is really driven by a state, and it's always some fearful state that you generate by imagining how things are not going to work out, right? As always, it's not as simple as what it may seem on the surface, as there is a whole lot that could contribute to this experience. The core of this experience is most often generated by some core belief that relates to not being good enough. So people finding themselves being driven to deaden the pain of not feeling good enough. But, of course, as soon as they have achieved something, the doubt and pain starts again. Because they most likely start asking themselves questions like, am I really good enough? What's wrong with me? And those kind of questions. The kind of questions that are really not serving them at all. So, for this month's masterclass, we are going to look at how we manifest something like being burnt out, as well as how to deal with this monster at its core, and also create the practices that will stress-proof your life and keep you in a powerful and resourceful state. Cool? So, let's start on the light note and with a big picture in mind. What's causing a burnout for us? Well, basically, it comes from these two things. Lack of rest and rejuvenation, overwork, right? And lack of motivation or reward. Now, the first one is easy. When we just work and never take a break that our body needs, we run out of energy and system starts collapsing on itself. You cannot drive your car on a maximum speed forever, right? You'd at least have to stop and refuel, check oil, and do an occasional service, right? This is an easy one to fix though, as a simple, much needed break could just as well restore everything to its optimal state. While this can easily be the cause for a burnout, in most cases though, the issue is something else. So let's look at the lack of motivation or reward story, as that's where things can get rather complex. So let's look at the stress and burnout from the perspective of the RSCI framework, the CSBR model. Oh, by the way, just in case of some wild chance here, for some reason you're not familiar yet with my CSBR model, I urge you then to stop with this video and go to your RSCI online library first and complete the module 1 of your personal breakthrough experience workshop. As all of the topics we'll ever discuss in our monthly masterclass will presume that you already have that as our common base, okay? Alright, so what is this CSBR model? Well, it's the idea that all of our results are absolutely and entirely caused by the sum total of your behavior. Everything that we did and didn't do combined caused our results in life, okay? Furthermore, all of our results are caused by our states, and all of our states are caused by our past conditioning, which is basically a sum total of all of your learnings in life, collected beliefs, values, attitudes, and all of your unconscious programming, alright? So let's look at the topic of the burnout from the angle of the CSBR model, alright? First, let's look at the result, okay? In the case of burnout, what is the result? Well, it's being burnt out, right? We've gone through a process, where as the result, we have inadvertently destroyed all of our internal resources. We say that we became burnt out, like in a case of a fire. We have no more fuel to add to the fire, so it can no longer generate heat and energy, okay? Or, said differently, we simply ran out of gas, right? Now, especially since there is no official diagnosis for burnout, a whole range of symptoms or results are identified with this particular condition. Here are a few common symptoms: mental and physical exhaustion, alienation from everyday activities, reduced performance, hard to concentrate, lack of creativity, feeling tired all the time. In severe cases, a lack of coherent behavior and what used to be called a nervous breakdown. Being unable to get enjoyment or fulfillment from things that normally bring joy or satisfaction. Unexplained general aches and pains. Difficulty getting along with or tolerating other people. Suicidal thoughts or thinking about harming oneself. Lack of interest in sex and menstrual changes. Moving or speaking more slowly than normal. Frightening flashbacks, severe nightmares, flight or fight symptoms such as racing heartbeat, dry mouth, sweating, even though there is no threat or danger. Psychosis, hallucinations, paranoia, delusions, lack of insight. You can see here, as with most things, there is a wide range of results that has experiences that many of us experience from time to time, all the way to the kind of experience that my friend had, which are severe and quite scary. If we were to assume that the CSBR model is true and that we have created those results for us, as I believe that all our results are created as a sum total of all our behavior, what we did, what we didn't do, all of it combined creates our results that we get to experience, right? And if this is indeed the case, how do we get to do this to ourselves? Well, this leads us toward the cause for all of our results, which is our behavior. So let's look at this issue from the point of behavior. From this perspective, burnt out is ultimately a situation of giving much more than what we have to give. Much like overplanting a field and then never nourishing the soil. If you continue to plant and harvest from the field, but you never allow it to rest, and we don't put back in the form of a fertilizer, one will continually have to work harder at it, and the field will produce less and less for the same effort. This kind of behavior creates stress, or more accurately, distress. Stress is the excretion of some sort of pressure, and that is generally good for us and usually makes us stronger. However, when we usually speak about stress, we are talking about distress, and that is when we are maintaining a level of pressure that's not sustainable, and it will eventually cause us to collapse or burn out. So in a way, burnout is the result of sustaining unsustainable levels of pressure over a long time, until things eventually fall apart. Managing stress means sustaining a level of pressure that keeps us growing and expanding. We'll recognize the difference by the fact that we have that sense of flow. So if it's true that stress or distress is created by behaviors that we adopt, such that does more damage than good, then why would we do this to ourselves? Or normal question would be, what would drive the kind of behavior that causes us to be distracted to ourselves? We all know that all behavior is driven from our state. So let's look at that part of the chain. Let's talk about the state. We're going to explore how to maintain the balance of giving and taking here. Also, we need to create an understanding of what it means to give and what it means to take. Well, it's no surprise. As always, the issue is that we ended up being in an unresourceful state for too long. It's just that this unresourceful state here, the burnout, is quite sneaky. Often stress is a symptom of fighting your own conditioning and as a result of being out of balance with regards to the different areas of your life. Stress symptoms can vary, but it always results in living in a negative state due to running an away from belief. Again, if you're new to my language and labels, an away from belief is a belief that has an intention to keep you away from pain. It wants you to make sure that you avoid pain, okay? It's usually quite a journey to get to that point where all your beliefs are congruent and in balance, right? So it would make sense to implement some practices that allow you to manage your own balance between exertion and renewal. See, we often have a fear of something, like not being enough. Whether it's on the context of money, status, power, recognition, or whatever. This fear can often drive us so much that we are never able to get enough. Almost like one of those dreams where you're being chased and you can never get away. The monster is always just behind you, no matter how fast you run. Eventually, your legs are going to tire and collapse, or like in the case of the burnout, you can experience all sorts of other symptomology. And this is simply because that fear just never goes away, regardless of how much we achieve. It simply drains us out of energy on an ongoing basis, affecting all our behavior, right? Alright, that's from the state perspective. But as always, the real question is, what would cause such a state? And the answer is always the same, as all our states are caused, generated, and maintained by our conditioning. This is our internal database of collected knowledge and experiences. It's right there where we are unconsciously filtering what's important to us, what we believe in, which ultimately creates and determines our perception, our perceived reality. While conditioning is a rather complex system, intimately connected with all of its components, let's touch upon the main ones here. Let's talk about values first. On so many levels, our perception, our motivation, it all ultimately relates to our values. This is a set of ideas that we find valuable, that we cherish in our minds as most important to us. There's a whole hierarchy within our values, a list if you like, where our values are neatly organized in their order of importance. You see, much like with the beliefs, as my master coaches would already know, we have values that are pulling us towards pleasure, the towards values, and we also have values that are pulling us away from pain. Those are the away from values. It's our values that determines what we would be motivated to do naturally and what are the things that takes effort to do. This brings us to the idea of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the kind of motivation that comes from inside, when it's self-generated. We internally generate an idea and we are drawn, motivated towards it. Proverbial self-generated carrot, if you will. This is the kind of motivation that generates energy. If you think about some children playing video games, they're able to pay full-on attention and focus for hours on end without getting tired. While if they have to pay attention in class or to do homework, their focus is very limited and they get tired very quickly, right? We can assume that intrinsic motivation generates energy and allows us to go into the flow. This is that state where we are able to continue working and focusing for hours without getting tired. These are the kinds of activities where time tends to stand still. We can even forget to eat or drink when we are under the influence of intrinsic motivation. Key points being here is that it's effortless and it's enjoyable and it's self-initiated and self-maintainable, which is super important. Now, let's look at the extrinsic motivation. This is the kind of motivation where the proverbial carrot is actually outside of us. Traditionally, this would be when we do something because we get paid to do it. The money allows us to pay our bills and provide for our families, but it's not always fulfilling, is it? We often find ourselves saying that they are the things that we have to do. If we were to think about traditional understanding of working out, exercising, so that we can build a strong and healthier body, most of us don't have a natural tendency to go towards experiencing the pain and effort that it takes to challenge our muscles to have that healthy, strong body. We do, however, understand the benefits of having a healthy, fit and vibrant body, so we push ourselves to do the exercise. But the motivation to do the actual exercise, for most of us, doesn't come from the inside. Again, generalizing here, I did say for most of us, okay? So unless exercise become an activity that's become intrinsically motivated, we have to fight against ourselves to get it done. See, it takes internal pressure and internal energy to push against what we would naturally want to do, which is not the workout, right? This is how burnout comes about. It's really about fighting against our internal, natural desires. Just think about this. Many people who have jobs for which they are intrinsically motivated, they can continue working for hours and hours on end without getting tired. Many artists and musicians fall in this category. Some of them can literally work for days and weeks non-stop. Me personally as well, I have a very similar experience when I'm on stage delivering a coaching training. I can literally keep going for 15 hours at a time, no problem. If you were there, you'd remember, I don't seem to need a loo break, nor I seem to care about going to bed at night. I've been teaching like that for days, and I'm still way more rested and energized than some of the students in the room. And they are the ones sitting down and resting, hey? This is possible for me because my motivation is intrinsic, and for as long as I do give my body what it needs for survival, like air, water, some nutrients, and some needed rest, I would literally never burn out. I remember flying around the world where I would deliver 24 days of training like that, from 9 a.m. till late at night, not evening, late at night, day in and day out, in one country. Then hop on the plane and right away start another 24 days of training in another country. Then I'll do the third country like that, and only then go home for some recovery time. One training like this is a marathon of a note, never mind 3 of them like that, hey? But now, watch this. If this was something which I had to push myself to keep going, I would be totally exhausted in like 6 hours, I think. Give me the same hours and change my topic for teaching into something I don't care about or have zero passion for, and see what happens. I think I'd disintegrate before lunchtime. So, once again, it all comes back to core conditioning. Whatever you believe is valuable or important to you will be generating energy for you. However, if your core conditioning isn't aligned with your goals, it would then take a lot of energy for you to produce those outcomes. Although, there's another component here for a potential cause of the issue. Your values could be intrinsically motivated, but you could have a conflict. I remember a time when I had my values conflicted. You see, in the beginning, my wife Billy and I would be doing all this together, and it was easy for both of us to get on the road when it was needed. No fuss, full alignment. But later on, we created a little family for us, and man, those kids spoiled it all for us. Just kidding here, okay? Of course, they are little angels, and I'd never change it for the world, okay? But their arrival, on its own accord, did create a sudden conflict in my values. You see, my wife could no longer go with me everywhere, and I started traveling, even attending some further specialized trainings without her. So, needless to say, there I am, doing my thing, living out my purpose, full on. Heart is full of joy and self-generated inspiration. Life is full of meaning, right? But I'm away from my family. They miss me. They are growing up without me. And all sorts of thoughts like that would be running through my mind. All generated by my values that being there with them, watching my kids grow, their first steps, first words, first many things. I'd want to be there and be a part of that. But I couldn't be, you see, because I was away, saving the world, right? Can you see an easy conflict there? Conflicts like that will express themselves in our states and behaviors and ultimately prevent us to show up congruently on either side. Not good, as you can imagine. An easy and somewhat quick solution for this is to have our parts integration process done. It's clean and neat and super ecological, where client's mind will reorganize everything to the most natural and beneficial alignment again. The more complex solution would be to elicit the values, evaluate them, and set up a new structure. Heavy-duty RSCI Master Coach intervention. Getting to a point where all your values are totally aligned and all your motivation is intrinsic is a journey, and it may take some inner work and time to get there. So, in the meantime, the possibility of causing distress and overexcretion always exists. It's therefore a great idea to create your life in such a way that you create opportunity for balance. Then to nourish that balance, that harmony, until harmony becomes natural. Having said that, let's also touch another major influencer here, which is your beliefs. I could hear some of you that, are a tad burned out in your life perhaps, listening to the section of values and going like, no, this can't be right. I love my job. I love what I do. I'm intrinsically motivated. And yet, I suffer a bit from the burnout. If this is you, you've been heard, okay? Your problem wouldn't be in the values misalignment, nor in the motivation department, okay? The issue is that probably coming from your belief system instead. I hope that beliefs don't need much introduction for you here. They're the pillars of your world, literally. They determine most of our perceptions, especially in terms of our identity, character, what's possible for us, what isn't, and the like. Really big deal, of course, in all matters' lives, so no difference here, as they can be a major contributor towards one's burnout as well. Speaking of which, this was the exact issue, I think, with my friend I just told you about. He loves his work, he's super passionate about it, and he has awesome results to show for. He works super hard, crazy long hours, but he loves it, or at least he did, until recently. You see, in his case, things were just fine, despite the hours and energy needed, until something changed within his environment. He kinda figured out that the company he was working for, the leadership that was above him, didn't seem to fully appreciate all his results and input. He got the praise, he was acknowledged and promoted many times before, but for a while now, things seemed to be stagnant in that department. Maybe his issue was lack of patience. Maybe he was growing faster than they could accommodate such growth for him. Who knows? But he found himself in a conflict of some sort, confusion in his belief system, re-evaluating his future in that company. The prospect of leaving and losing that job and secure income that he's used to. And these kinds of challenges, at times of uncertainty, our deepest, well-hidden, personal limitations will show up. Am I good enough? Am I enough? Will I manage to pull us through this? Am I strong enough? Will I be loved if I fail? Will I lose my family? What will my parents think of me? Are they going to be disappointed or embarrassed by me if I fail? This stuff is deep, I'm telling you, and this wouldn't be part of one's conscious mind's construct. And this topic would never even feature in the normal conversation with this person, as these people are rather perceived as strong, super capable, and they would feel and know that too. Like I said, this stuff tends to come to surface only at times when we are thrown off the balance. Only when we start doubting ourselves and our future, our abilities to deliver. And the more we have on our plate, the responsibilities often linked to the amount of installments that we committed to each month, or on a larger scale, what will happen to all my employees and their families if I screw this up? Yeah? Scale doesn't matter. It's our own deep personal beliefs and doubts that will come out to play the moment you're not your natural self. So he lost his juice. Worry came in and it slowly disarmed him, got him tired, weak and confused. Wonderful playground for a spiraling negative train of thoughts to come out and play, right? And we all know how convincing some of our thoughts can be, don't we? In those times, unless we master the understanding of the nature of the thought, it's super easy to buy into it and experience such thought as being real. Never mind it, just because a thought is in your head, it doesn't mean that it's real, right? So what needs to be done here is, of course, to bolster his self-image, restore his identity, and have him align with his desired future. We'd need to dig some more, eliciting all sorts of doubts and limiting beliefs in order for him to become, once again, confident and purposeful man that he was. Because while he was operating from that space, everything in his life was growing and flourishing, like we all are when we operate from that space, don't we? Okay, there's one final component of this structure that I have to mention, and that is memories. Specifically, I'm talking about the memories that we have from the past, obviously. When we think about a past event, it's very possible that some emotions come up all by themselves with it, right? So, for our purpose here, we'll be focusing only on those memories that are triggering negative emotions to come up. We call them unprocessed negative emotions, which are obviously affecting our states, right? Now, in plain English, this is our emotional baggage that we tend to pile up and carry around with us. It's the very thing that determines our perception of our past. If when we think of the past, we see some dark memories and events and negative emotions come flooding, then what do you think we'd be inclined to think and believe about our future that's coming? More of the same, right? So this is a major issue in general for many people as a starting point, but let's keep it to the context of the burnout here. While they could be suffering from piled up baggage in another area of their life, and that would affect all other areas as well, I'll stay with this example instead. If client had a fairly normal life so far, but all of a sudden went through some dark hardships, like this friend of mine, then it may be needed to clean all of that newfound baggage as well, in addition to all of the things that I talked about so far. You know, the values and beliefs. Fear of such thoughts coming up again can be devastating and thus prolonging the condition and re-inviting it in his life. What we focus on, we attract, right? We are creating it by thinking about it. And when there is a major volume of an emotion to it, the attraction is just stronger. So to avoid his concerning thoughts flooding in over and over again, we'd probably need to have him truly let go of this recent episode, which means have him fully discharge emotionally so that he can let go of it in the first place. Make sense? Alright, I trust this helps you understand the topic of burnout a bit better and what specifically you can do about it. These were the biggest coaching steps I would take someone through for such presenting problem. It looks like we are running out of time for this masterclass as I promised to keep the monthly content under an hour long. So here's some immediate action steps I'd want you to do, having burnout or not right now. First, the forgiveness process. I find this intervention super useful for healing in general, restoring our energetic field. So if you haven't experienced this yet from me, please go to your RSCI online library and do this session. It's a gift to yourself of a note, trust me. I have my clients go through it whether there's something to forgive to anyone or not. There is so much more to this session than forgiveness, so just do it, alright? Read the instructions over there first, have your headphones ready and just go with it, okay? Then we have the time paradigm techniques intervention. This is the holy grail for all of our emotional work. With it, you can easily and rather effortlessly release unwanted negative emotions such as anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt in a matter of minutes, rather than days, months, or years. You can overcome your limiting beliefs such as I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, I can't make enough money, I'm not capable. Any belief that drains you and makes you feel less than an amazing, resourceful human being that you are, it has to go, okay? So you can use these techniques to build up your self-esteem, your self-image, to gain emotional control in your life and get clarity on what you really want. Use it to restore absolute confidence in yourself and so much more, of course. Now, these techniques are really awesome and they will work fantastically well. And, as you are aware, most of them have only one limitation. They work on all perceived limitations. That means that if you don't perceive or if you're not aware of the particular issue inside, you need to wait for the unconscious mind to release it to your awareness. And that is why I said that it's a journey. Otherwise, you'd be a superhuman after only one session. Now, for my coaches, while they all can do timeline for themselves and resolve any perceived limitation, I find that even them, they do need a nudging hand, a reminder that it's all in their mind and that a solution is always just one thought away. With that in mind, as part of us here creating a community of like-hearted people, I trust you'll easily find a helping hand here. And I don't mean a shoulder to cry on, but rather a bunch of highly skilled coaches in our group here, as I am sure that just about anyone will jump to your aid and help you overcome your perceived limitations. And if you're somehow not one of my trained coaches, that's alright. Other than time paradigm techniques I just mentioned, all my other advice is instantly applicable for you as I've made sure you have access to these techniques right away. Hint, it's in your RSCI library. Alright? And if you were amazed by the claims I just made in terms of what time paradigm techniques can do for a human being, get in line, my friend. Reach out in our Facebook group as you're surrounded by coaches and master coaches, all trained by me and perfectly capable of delivering such a profound session for you. Hire any one of them and you'll do yourself a major favor and speed up your own evolution as a human being. That's all I'm going to say about that. And if you'd care about a few more practical tips, more general resources to help you continually get more and more congruent at the level of your conditioning, then I'll include them in your printed version of this masterclass. It's going to be some simple, general tips on state stress management, okay? Because what I'd much rather talk to you still about is what's always the main learning, the key understanding that I feel like including in every single masterclass issue. So let me close in this way. As my parting thoughts to you for this masterclass issue, I'm talking about the understanding that our thoughts create emotions. Or, said differently, you are living in the feeling of your thinking. The more you understand this concept, the more freedom you'll have in your life. The quality of your life is determined solely by the quality of the thinking patterns that you're entertaining in your mind. From that perspective, you can have any thoughts that you want and just enjoy life regardless of the circumstances around you. Easier said than done again, so let's explore that a bit deeper. I'm saying that we are thinking creatures and that whatever we are thinking about, our mind creates a matching set of emotions with the sole purpose to give us feedback to the quality of our thinking. So it's an illusion that we are experiencing an outside-in reality. In fact, we're not even capable of experiencing the world outside of us directly. All that incoming information that comes through our 5 or more senses gets filtered in our mind first. Our mind processes all that incoming data and based on our past experiences assigns a meaning to it. Only then chemicals are released in our body, emotions, and we get to experience them. This means that in reality, we are feeling the meanings that our mind assigned to the circumstances and situations that we are in, and not the circumstances themselves. You see, it's a great illusion that we are feeling our situations in life. Because we are not. We are not even capable of doing that. We are feeling whatever we are thinking about our circumstances, don't we? This is why two people can process the exact same event differently. In same circumstances, one can find opportunity, motivation, and strength, while the other can find misery and hopelessness. So I'd argue the point that all our problems in life, literally, are coming from our insecure thinking. All of our problems arise from this big misunderstanding. If we arrived at this deep sense of knowing that it's all thought created, it would change our relationship with our results and with our thoughts and our feelings. For our topic of the month here specifically, the burnout, is also a result of insecure thinking, which leads me right into the next section, which we discussed already today, which is your self-image. If one didn't believe that he's not worth much, without creating that house, that car, that lifestyle, if one believed that he's small and insignificant, a true disappointment in the eyes of the peers, then creating those things at all costs wouldn't drive him mad and into a total collapse of his system, right? Then we have the topic of polarities. Having those desires and such goals is totally okay by me. Taking massive action towards it and dedicating time and putting the needed energy into it is great. But one has to have a big picture first. You have to understand that work and rest are part of the same whole. They are two opposite sides of one whole thing. And yes, you guessed it, we need balance here. Work, work, work and never rest is not sustainable. You need to make time for and also prioritize rest. It should be as important creating the rest time, allowing your mind and body to reset, recoup, rejuvenate, and recreate energy for the next phase of work. Most people devalue rest, which is not very surprising either. Most of us grew up in the environment that was supporting the statements like, I'll sleep when I'm dead and the like, sleeping 3 to 4 hours per night, glorifying the idea that, I'm a machine, and then the I can do it attitude, right? Ignorance at its best. Total opposite of where peak performance comes from. Make time for rest, a necessary component of you creating success in your life. You'll enjoy newfound resources, creativity, fresh ideas, and even healthier body to carry your mind around. Alright, then we have the issue of inner motivation and values conflict. As we discussed today, sometimes the issue is also misalignment in our values, things that are important to us. If you are stuck in a line of work that you don't have much heart for, if you are there doing what you have to do, it results eventually in taking an extreme amount of conscious push and sheer will just to get you to show up for the way they need you to show up today. Honor your values by doing things that are more meaningful to you, or change your values. If you don't, this inner conflict will eat you alive and degrade every aspect of your life eventually. And at last, let me say a thing or two about becoming resilient to stress and therefore the burnout. I call it resourcing. Just so you know, this is different from sleeping or just plain resting. I make purposefully a time in a day for hanging out with my body. I've discovered the effects of purposeful breathing and realigning my heart with my brain, creating a heart-brain coherence, if you will, creating that alignment to be my default state, a default base setting for all my systems. And I value that so much because operating from that space has enormous benefits. You'll find an entire course on this topic in your RSCI library as well, called Awakened Heart. It's my current semi-obsession and one of my latest creations. There we go. Like I said, in the printed version, I'll add some simple, common sense advice for you and your clients to play with. Once again, I wish to express my deep gratitude for you and for your decision to join me on this journey. This is an official beginning of a brand new chapter in my life as I found this new vehicle through which I get to stay in your life ongoingly as a means to continue contributing and adding value in your life. Aim is to create an environment of like-hearted people that will not only be a supportive group of people for you, but rather a catalyst for your own personal evolution and further embodiment of these main concepts that we'll continue exploring. I look forward to hanging out with you on our bi-monthly live calls where I'll extend my invitation for you guys for even more coaching, mentoring, teaching, and listening. I want to hear from you. I want to know what else you'd want from me. I'd like to get a sense of the most burning topics for you so that I can deliver the most relevant monthly content for you. We'll have a call on every other Wednesday with slight deviations in cases when I'm running a live training somewhere, right? But we'll talk about all of that on our first call. Alright, that's it from me for this month's masterclass. See you on the calls. I love you and I'm sending you all of my heart with a sole purpose to transform you from within. Ciao.